Judge Caprio left speechless when Billionaire's daughter said, "I own you." Imagine walking into a courthouse like you own it, not metaphorically, but actually believing your father's billions have purchased every brick, every bench, and every breath of air in the room. That was Victoria Ashford, 23 years old, daughter of Silicon Valley titan Marcus Ashford, founder and CEO of Ashmore Tech, one of the largest technology conglomerates in the world. She had never heard the word no in her entire life. Her father was worth $8.4 billion. Her mother, Christine, had died when Victoria was 7, and in the years since, money had become both her security blanket and her weapon. _forward_I ask them. She lived in a penthouse overlooking the bay, drove a Lamborghini with vanity plates that read Daddy's dollar, and believed the world existed to serve her convenience, until she parked in a disabled spot in Providence, Rhode Island, and met Judge Frank Caprio. The violation was small on paper, a $350 fine for parking in a handicapped space outside a luxury boutique on Westminster Street. But the body cam footage told a different story. Victoria tearing up the ticket, throwing it at the parking officer's shoes, sneering, "Get a real job." The video went viral online before the ink on the citation had even dried. 3 court summons followed. She ignored them. A warrant was issued, and so, on a grey Wednesday morning, Victoria Ashford finally appeared before Judge Caprio 45 minutes late. The entrance, when the double doors opened, heads turned. Victoria didn't walk into the courtroom. She arrived, like a storm, in designer heels, $15,000 Chanel suit, bar 10 Hermes handbag, coffee from an exclusive cafe she wasn't supposed to bring inside. She didn't notice the curious stares from the single mother, nervously clutching a ticket, or the elderly man in a frayed coat holding expired registration papers. To Victoria, they were scenery. The bailiff called the court to order. She didn't look up from her phone. The bailiff called the court to order. She didn't look up from her phone. Judge Caprio entered, a quiet man of 87, dignified, his robe a symbol of authority earned, not purchased. He smiled warmly as he took his seat. "Good morning, Miss Ashford," he said. Victoria didn't answer. Her thumbs moved across her phone screen, scrolling. The silence grew thick. People shifted uneasily. Finally, the judge spoke, again slightly firmer this time. "Miss Ashford, I'm speaking to you." She looked up, annoyance flashing across her perfect features. "Yeah, I'm here. Can we hurry this up? I have an appointment at noon." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The confrontation begins. Judge Caprio's gaze didn't harden, it focused. He gestured, "Please approach the bench." Victoria sighed dramatically, stood, and sauntered forward, her heels clicking against the marble floor. "Leave your phone, please," he added. She frowned. "I'm expecting an important call." The judge tilted his head. "More important than court?" Honestly, she shrugged. "Yes, it's a parking ticket. Not exactly life or death." The veteran sitting in the second row shook his head. Caprio folded his hands. "Miss Ashford, you were cited for parking in a disabled space outside a store. Do you dispute that?" "I was there 10 minutes, she said. "No one was using it." "That doesn't matter," Caprio replied. "Those spaces exist for people who need them." Victoria rolled her eyes. "Then they should get there faster." You could feel the air leave the room. The single mother covered her mouth. The court reporter stopped typing. The veteran gripped his cane until his knuckles went white. Caprio said quietly, "That was an exceptionally unkind thing to say." "I'm just being honest," she replied. "People are too sensitive. Honesty without compassion," he said evenly, "is cruelty wearing a mask. A lesson in reality." Caprio leaned forward, his tone turning gentle. "Tell me about yourself, Miss Ashford." What do you do with your time? Victoria tilted her head. What do you want to know? I'm rich. Is that a crime? No, the judge said. But how you treat people can be. She laughed a brittle, humorless sound. I treat people fine. I pay them well. He paused. You pay them. Everyone works for someone, she said flatly. Even you. Caprio's expression stayed calm, but something behind his eyes shifted, spark of sorrow for what she truly believed. I work for the people of Providence, he said softly. Not for the wealthy, not for the powerful, for everyone. Victoria shrugged. Everyone's someone's employee, Your Honor. The words fell like ice across the room. For the first time, Judge Caprio saw past her defiance to the hollow loneliness sitting behind it. But he wasn't done trying. He began explaining why disabled parking laws existed. She interrupted twice before sighing loudly. Can we just skip to the part where I pay and leave? I have better things to do. Miss Ashford, he said, you'll remain until we finish properly. She scoffed. Or what? You'll hold me in contempt. Only if you force me to. She smirked. Respect for what, exactly? For you sitting up there in your robe, wasting my morning. The veteran stood. Your Honor, may I say something? Caprio nodded. Please. The man turned toward her. I lost my leg in Vietnam. I use disabled parking because walking 50 yards hurts every step. And you think it's a joke? Victoria's response was instant and catastrophic. Oh great, another war story to make me feel guilty. The courtroom erupted. Shouts, gasps. Judge Caprio's gavel came down 1, 2, 3 sharp cracks. Order, he thundered. The room fell silent, trembling with contained outrage. He turned back to her, his voice low. I have tried to be patient, but you are making that increasingly difficult. The breaking point. Maybe that's because you're judging me, she shot back. I'm not judging you, Caprio said quietly. I'm listening to you, and what I hear is a young woman confusing wealth with worth, privilege with power, and loneliness with independence. Her chin trembled. The first crack in her armor. You don't know me. I know you lost your mother when you were 7, Caprio said. I know your father drowned his grief in work and left you to be raised by staff who were paid to care, not to love. I know you've been expelled from 2 schools and shielded by money every time you failed to face consequences. And I know you are terrified right now because, for the first time, money can't fix this. Her face went pale. That's not relevant. It's everything, he said gently. Because this isn't about a parking ticket. It's about a young woman drowning in privilege and calling it power. Tears welled in her eyes, but she forced a bitter laugh. You think you're so wise, sitting there analyzing me. You don't know what it's like to be me. You're right, Caprio said. But I do know what it's like to grow up with love and parents who cared enough to say no. The first tear slipped down her cheek. This isn't fair, she whispered. You're supposed to just find me and let me go. If I did that, Caprio said, I'd be failing you just like everyone else has. The words that stopped the room. Something inside her snapped. My father, she said sharply, built a company worth billions. He employs thousands. He donates millions to this city, including the new wing of this courthouse you're sitting in right now. Caprio didn't move. I'm aware of his contributions. So maybe remember where your paycheck comes from? The veteran groaned audibly. The single mother whispered, Oh my God. Caprio's voice was steady. My paycheck comes from taxpayers, Miss Ashford, every one of them. Rich or poor, she smirked. That's a nice speech. But we both know money talks. The judge tilted his head. And what does it say? She took a step closer, her eyes glittering with defiance. It says this. My father makes a phone call, and people listen. He writes a check, and problems disappear. He has dinner with senators, And when he wants something, he gets it. That's power. That's the real world. The judge's tone didn't change. So you believe you're above the law? I believe I shouldn't have to stand here being lectured like some crimin over a parking spot no one was using. You're not being lectured, Caprio said quietly. You're being given a chance. She threw her arms wide. Fine. What's the fine? Tell me the number and I'll write a check right now. We can stop pretending this matters. Caprio shook his head. It's not about the money. Then what is it about? She shouted. What do you want from me? He opened his mouth to answer, but she cut him off, her voice rising to a near scream. You want respect. Let me tell you something about respect. Your honor, respect is earned, not demanded, and I don't see anything here worth respecting. The moment Caprio rose slowly, a gesture so rare that the bailiff straightened instinctively. Miss Ashford, he said, voice low and controlled. Sit down. But she didn't. Instead, she stepped forward again, fury and panic merging into reckless defiance. Listen carefully, Judge, she said, spitting the title like venom. My father funds this courthouse, this city, the police who guard your door. He has the governor's cell number, the mayor on speed dial. He controls more money than you'll see in 10 lifetimes. The courtroom froze. So let me make this very simple, she said. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire room. I own you. The words detonated like a bomb. The 3 words hung in the air like a weapon. I own you. For 5 seconds, the courtroom was silent. No rustling papers, no whispered reactions. Just the hum of the air conditioning and the sound of one young woman's arrogance echoing through history. Victoria Ashford stood tall-chin raised, chest heaving, eyes defiant. She thought she'd won. She thought that sentence would remind everyone exactly where she came from, who she was, and how untouchable she'd always been. But then Judge Frank Caprio stood, and everything changed. The quiet before the lesson. He didn't shout. He didn't slam the gavel. He just looked at her with an expression no one in that courtroom would ever forget. Something between sorrow and disappointment. Miss Ashford, he said, his voice soft but resonant. Did you just tell me that you own me? A flicker of hesitation passed through her, gone almost before it began. I stated a fact, she said. My family's money runs this city. Everyone knows it. The words were meant to sound powerful. They sounded small. Judge Caprio nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. I see. So in your understanding, financial contribution equates to ownership of the law, the courts, and the people who serve them. Victoria's voice sharpened. I'm just being realistic. That's how the world works. He leaned forward slightly, and the room somehow felt smaller. And how has that world been working for you, Miss Ashford? The question hung there. Unexpected. Cutting. Victoria blinked, thrown off for the first time. I'm doing fine, she said quickly. Better than fine. Are you? The judge asked gently. Because, from where I'm standing, I see someone who has everything money can buy and absolutely nothing that it can't. The color drained slightly from her cheeks. You don't know anything about me. You're right, he said softly. So why don't you tell us? Unraveling privilege. The judge took a slow step forward from behind his bench, something rare for him. He didn't move like a man of power. He moved like a man carrying empathy as armor. You said your father donates to this courthouse, he continued, that he pays the salaries of the people who serve here. You seem proud of that. I am, she said. He built something huge. I am, she said. He built something huge. He deserves respect. He does. Caprio agreed. But what about you, Miss Ashford? What have you built? The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria's jaw tightened. I don't have to prove anything. My last name speaks for itself. He nodded. Ah, the unearned inheritance of identity. She frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means," Caprio said, his tone soft but sure, "that you've spent your whole life living in someone else's You're mistaking the warmth of his spotlight for your own light." The gallery murmured. Even those who had come to pay fines or plead for leniency leaned forward. Caught between awe and disbelief, Victoria's voice cracked slightly. "You don't know what it's like to be me. Everyone expects you to be perfect, to live up to something impossible. You can't trust anyone. People pretend to care because they want something. Money ruins everything." Judge Caprio's expression softened, just slightly. "That's the first honest thing you've said today." The veteran speaks. The old veteran in the second row stood again, cane trembling in his hand. "Your Honor, may I speak?" Caprio gestured kindly. "Please, sir." The man turned toward Victoria. "Miss Ashford, I lost my leg in Vietnam trying to save my friend. I use disabled parking because walking is pain, every single step. You think the world owes you something, but life doesn't owe anyone a thing. It's what you give that matters." Victoria's lips parted, but no words came. The defiance that had fueled her for years faltered against the quiet dignity of his pain. Judge Caprio nodded toward the veteran. "Thank you, sir. You've said more in 30 seconds than some people manage in 30 years. Then, turning back to Victoria, he said, "Would you like to respond?" Her chin trembled. "I didn't mean to be cruel." "But you were," the judge said, not harshly, just factually. "Because cruelty becomes easy when empathy costs nothing. You've lived in a world where money solves problems before you have to feel them." She swallowed hard. "So what now? You going to fine me? Make a big example?" He shook his head. "I'm going to teach you. The lesson begins." Judge Caprio returned to his bench, every step deliberate. He looked down at the paperwork, then back up at her. "Miss Ashford, if I fine you $350, what happens?" "I pay it," she said simply. "I probably won't even notice." "Exactly," he said, "which means the fine has no value. A consequence that doesn't change behavior isn't. Justice, it's bureaucracy." He paused, then said, "Do you know what your father's money cannot buy?" Victoria hesitated, then smirked faintly. "Apparently, your patience." A few people gasped. But instead of anger, Judge Caprio smiled sadly. "Maybe not, but I can use my patience to give you something far more valuable than money." "And what's that?" "A mirror of truth." He reached for a folder on his desk and opened it. "Miss Ashford, this isn't your first brush with the law. 17 moving violations in 5 years, 2 incidents of reckless driving dismissed. Vandalism charge settled. Each one handled by lawyers your father hired." Her eyes widened. "That's not incorrect." He finished for her. "The records don't lie." She said nothing. "Every time someone cleaned up your mistakes, they stole something from you." Her brow furrowed. "What are you talking about?" "They stole your chance to grow," he said softly. "Your chance to learn humility, empathy, boundaries. They thought they were protecting you. They were actually abandoning you." Her lips parted, trembling. "You don't know my father." "I don't have to," Caprio replied. "I know the pattern. I've seen it before. Children raised in mansions, but starving for love." The courtroom had gone silent again. Even the bailiff's posture softened, his hands unclenched at his sides. Victoria blinked back tears she hadn't given permission to fall. "You're just making assumptions." "No," he said, "I'm describing what I see: a young woman who confuses attention for affection and control for security, who lashes out because being vulnerable has always been punished in her world." Her mascara began to smudge. "Stop." "Why?" Caprio asked quietly. "Because I'm saying what no one ever has." She shook her head violently, whispering, "You don't understand." He leaned forward. "Help me, then, help me understand." The confession. And for the first time in her life, Victoria told the truth. "My mother died when I was 7, she began, her voice trembling. "We were in the car together. She fell asleep at the wheel. I woke up in the hospital. My father, he never came. Not for 3 days. When he did, he handed me an iPad and said, 'Don't cry. Everything's going to be fine.' That's how he fixes things. He throws money at them." The tears came freely now. "Every birthday was another check. Every time I got in trouble, another lawyer. I kept pushing boundaries because no one ever stopped me. I just wanted someone to care enough to say no." The words hit like thunder in that room. The woman everyone had hated minutes ago now looked like a child, lost in the wreckage of her own privilege. The veteran's wife dabbed her eyes. The single mother sighed softly. Even the judge's throat tightened. The verdict of the heart. Judge Caprio descended from the bench again. He stood just a few feet from her, his presence calm and unshakable. "Miss Ashford," he said, "you came in here believing your father's wealth gave you ownership of others. But what you actually own is pain and the power to turn it into something better." Victoria sniffled, her voice cracking. "I don't know how." "Then we'll start small," he said. "You're not paying a fine. Instead, you'll serve 200 hours at the Rhode Island Food Bank." Her eyes widened. "What? You can't." "I can," he said simply. "And you will," he continued. "You'll work alongside the people who make this city run, people who struggle to feed their families, who work 2 jobs to survive. You'll serve them, not because they need you, but because you need them." She swallowed. "And if I don't," he met her gaze, "then you'll prove everything I've said about you. But I don't think you will." The veteran rose once more, his voice gentle now. "Your Honor, I volunteer there every Saturday. I'll work beside her, if she have me." Victoria looked at him through blurred vision. "After what I said to you, why would you?" He smiled faintly. "Because someone showed me kindness once when I didn't deserve it." Her lip quivered. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." The veteran nodded. "Then that's a good start." The final lesson. Judge Caprio returned to his bench, eyes glistening. "Miss Ashford," he said, "you walked into this courtroom trying to prove you owned power. But real power isn't control over others, it's control over yourself. You don't own anyone. You serve everyone." Victoria wiped her face, her voice soft. "Thank you, Your Honor." He smiled, the kind of smile that comes from faith in human potential. "You're welcome. And remember this, sometimes the greatest act of kindness is saying no." She nodded, still trembling, and turned toward the door. As she reached it, she stopped and looked back. "You were right," she said quietly. "Money can't fix everything. But maybe people can." The gallery rose to its feet, not in judgment, but in quiet applause. For humility, for grace, for a lesson learned in 18 minutes that money could never buy. "I can," he said simply, "and you will," he continued. "You'll work alongside the people who make this city run, people who struggle to feed their families, who work 2 jobs to survive. You'll serve them, not because they need you, but because you need them." She swallowed. "And if I don't?" He met her gaze. "Then you'll prove everything I've said about you. But I don't think you will." The veteran rose once more, his voice gentle now. "Your Honor, I volunteer there every Saturday. I'll work beside her if she have me." He smiled faintly. "Because someone showed me kindness once when I didn't deserve it." Her lip quivered. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." The veteran nodded. "Then that's a good start." The final lesson. Judge Caprio returned to his bench, eyes glistening. "Miss Ashford," he said, "you walked into this courtroom trying to prove you owned power. But real power isn't control over others, it's control over yourself. You don't own anyone, you serve everyone." Victoria wiped her face, her voice soft. "Thank you, Your Honor. You were right," she said quietly. "Money can't fix everything, but maybe maybe people can. The gallery rose to its feet, not in judgment, but in quiet applause. For humility, for grace. 6 months later, Providence winters bite through every layer. But that Saturday morning, the Rhode Island food bank was warmer than any mansion Victoria Ashford had ever lived in. She had traded Chanel for a plain grey hoodie, Louboutin heels for worn sneakers. Her manicured hands were covered in flour dust from a morning shift baking rolls for families lined up outside. Every week since that courtroom day she had been here sorting cans, sweeping floors, serving soup. At first she'd hated it. The smell, the noise, the looks people gave her when they recognized the fallen heiress who once said she owned a judge. But somewhere between the first thank you from a mother feeding 3 kids and the first smile from a tired veteran with 1 leg and infinite patience, something inside her began to thaw. That veteran Mr. Gaines never missed a shift. He never mentioned Vietnam again. He just worked beside her, teaching her to stir huge pots of stew, teaching her that humility isn't a punishment, it's freedom. The invitation. One Friday afternoon, after closing, Victoria found an envelope taped to the pantry door. Her name was written in Judge Caprio's neat handwriting. Miss Ashford, I'd like to see you in court Monday morning at 10. No summons, no hearing, just a visit. Bring Mr. Gaines if he's willing. FC. Her stomach twisted. She hadn't been back inside a courtroom since the day she'd broken down there. This time, she wasn't walking in with entitlement, she was walking in with gratitude. Back in court one last time, 2 weeks later, the Providence Gazette asked Judge Caprio for a follow-up interview. When he entered the courtroom that morning, cameras waited, the old benches filled, again with townspeople who had seen the transformation. With their own eyes, Victoria stood at the same place she'd stood half a year before the defendants, mark that had once felt like shame. This time, she stood there by choice. Caprio addressed the court. 6 months ago, he said, Miss Ashford walked in believing her father's wealth could purchase justice. Today she stands here having earned something far greater dignity. This court owes her no fine. But perhaps we owe her thanks for reminding us that redemption is possible. The Christine Ashford Center for Youth Empowerment, founded by Victoria Ashford and Frank Caprio. Inside, teens from every background learned financial literacy, civic responsibility, and empathy through community service. On opening day, Marcus Ashford stood quietly at the back, hands folded, watching his daughter cut the ribbon. Mr. Gaines held the scissors beside her. Reporters asked Victoria what inspired her. She smiled to all the judge sitting in the front row. A man once told me I didn't own anyone, she said. He was right. The only thing worth owning is your character. The applause that followed wasn't for a billionaire's daughter. It was for a woman who had finally learned what her fortune could never buy. The end.